There is a strategy wealthy Canadian families have quietly used for decades, and most ordinary retirees in this country have never even heard the name of it. It's not illegal. It's not some offshore scheme. It's not buried in a Cayman Islands trust. It's sitting right inside Canadian tax law, right under the nose of the CRA, and the wealthiest people in Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, and Montreal have been using it for generations to legally avoid enormous tax bills while passing millions of dollars down to their children. And here's the part that honestly bothers me. The average Canadian retiree, the person who worked 40 years at a real job, paid their taxes on every single paycheck, raised their kids, paid off their mortgage, contributed to their RRSP like the government told them to, that person was never taught any of this. Not once. Not in school, not by their bank, not by their financial advisor, and definitely not by the CRA. And today, I'm going to walk you through it, slowly, carefully, in plain language, because what you're about to hear could change the entire shape of your retirement in 2026. Now let me tell you what this strategy is actually called. In the United States, the wealthy call it buy, borrow, die. And yes, it works in Canada too, just with a Canadian twist, because our tax system has its own rules, its own traps, and its own quiet little doors that almost nobody talks about. The CRA does not want ordinary Canadians to understand this, because the moment you understand it, you stop overpaying. You stop triggering capital gains you didn't need to trigger. You stop collapsing your RRSP at the worst possible time. You stop selling the cottage in a panic. You stop liquidating investments just to fund your lifestyle. And once enough Canadians figure this out, the CRA loses billions. So let me show you how this actually works. The idea is simple, but the execution is where things get really interesting. You buy appreciating assets. You borrow against those assets instead of selling them. And you hold those assets until death, where Canadian tax law and proper estate planning can dramatically reduce what your family loses to taxes and probate. Buy, borrow, die. 3 words, 3 steps, and an entire lifetime of tax efficiency hidden inside them. Let's start with the buy part, because most retirees already did this without realizing it. If you bought a home in Mississauga in 1989, or a cottage in Muskoka in 1995, or a duplex in East Vancouver in 2001, congratulations, you already executed step 1. You bought an appreciating asset. Same thing if you've been quietly building a non-registered investment account, or holding ETFs, or buying dividend-paying Canadian bank stocks for 30 years. You bought assets that grew. The problem is, most Canadians were taught that the only way to use that wealth in retirement is to sell it. Sell the cottage, sell the rental, sell the stocks, draw down the RRSP. And every single one of those moves, every one of them, triggers the CRA, capital gains, income inclusion, OAS clawback, probate exposure. It's a tax bloodbath, and most retirees walk straight into it smiling because nobody ever told them there was another way. This is where the borrow part comes in, and this is honestly shocking when you really understand it. Instead of selling your appreciating assets and handing 50% of the gain to the CRA at your marginal rate, you borrow against them. And in Canada, borrowed money is not income. Let me say that again, slowly, because this is the single most important sentence in this entire video. Borrowed money is not taxable income in Canada. You can pull $100,000 out of a HELOC tomorrow, and the CRA does not see $1 of it as income. No T-slip, no tax bill, no clawback on your OAS. Nothing. Most retirees never realize this. They spend their entire lives terrified of debt, while the wealthy use debt as the single most powerful tax-free income stream in the country. Now let me show you the tools. The first one is the HELOC, the home equity line of credit. If you own a paid-off home in Canada worth $800,000, the bank will typically let you borrow up to 65% of that value as a revolving line of credit, sometimes more with a readvanceable mortgage. That's potentially $500,000 of tax-free liquidity sitting on your house, and most retirees don't even have the HELOC set up. They're eating into their RRIF, paying tax on every withdrawal, watching their OAS get clawed back, while $500,000 of tax-free borrowing capacity sits unused above their kitchen. The second tool is the securities-backed line of credit, sometimes called an investment line of credit. If you have a non-registered portfolio of, say, $600,000 in Canadian blue-chip stocks and ETFs, the bank will lend you against that portfolio, often at prime or prime plus a small spread, without you having to sell a single share. You keep the dividends, you keep the growth, you keep the dividend tax credit, you keep the deferred capital gain, and you get tax-free cash in your checking account next week. A lot of Canadians are getting this completely wrong. They sell the stocks, trigger the gain, pay the CRA, lose the future growth, and then wonder why their retirement money runs out at 78. The third tool, and this is where things get really interesting, is borrowing against the cash value of a permanent life insurance policy, usually a participating whole life policy from one of the big Canadian mutual insurers. The wealthy have been doing this in Canada for over 100 years. You fund the policy during your working years. The cash value grows inside the policy on a tax-advantaged basis. And in retirement, you either borrow directly from the insurer using a policy loan, or you use the policy as collateral for a bank loan, often called an immediate financing arrangement or a collateral insurance loan. You receive tax-free cash. The policy keeps growing. And when you pass away, the death benefit pays off the loan, and the rest goes to your beneficiaries, generally tax-free, bypassing probate entirely because life insurance with a named beneficiary does not flow through your estate. Wow. Just sit with that for a second. That's unbelievable. The wealthy have been using whole life insurance as a private tax-free retirement bank, and the average Canadian was told whole life insurance is a ripoff. Who do you think benefits from that narrative? Now let me give you a real example, a fictional one, but based on situations I have seen play out again and again across this country. Let's talk about Barbara. Barbara is 68 years old. She lives in Burlington, Ontario. Her husband passed away 4 years ago. She has a paid-off house worth $950,000. She has a cottage near Bracebridge that she and her husband bought in 1992 for $110,000, now worth $680,000. She has $300,000 in a RRIF, $90,000 in a TFSA, and about $220,000 in a non-registered account holding Canadian bank stocks she's owned since the 90s. On paper, Barbara is a millionaire. In her checking account, Barbara has $11,000 and she is genuinely scared. Property taxes went up, heating went up, groceries are insane. Her CPP and OAS combined are about $2,400 a month. Her late husband's small pension adds another $900, and she's being told by a well-meaning advisor at her bank to sell the cottage because the kids never use it, and to draw more from the RRIF. Here is what would happen if Barbara followed that advice. She sells the cottage for $680,000. The capital gain is $570,000. 50% of that, $285,000, gets added to her income in a single year. Her marginal rate spikes. She pays well over $130,000 in tax. Her OAS gets fully clawed back that year. Her bank stocks, if she sells them too, trigger another huge gain because her adjusted cost base is tiny. And the RRIF withdrawals on top of that push her into territory she has never been in her life. Barbara could easily lose $200,000 to the CRA in 12 months. $200,000 that her husband worked his entire life to build. This is getting serious. Most people have no idea this exists as a risk until it's already happened. Now let me show you what the buy, borrow, die approach looks like for Barbara instead. Step 1. She sets up a HELOC on her paid-off house. The bank approves her for around $600,000 of available credit. She doesn't use it all. She uses it as a tax-free income supplement, drawing maybe $40,000 a year to top up her cash flow. Step 2. She sets up an investment line of credit against her non-registered portfolio so she never has to sell the bank stocks and trigger that gain. Step 3. She keeps the cottage because in Canada, when she passes away, there is a deemed disposition at death. Yes, but with proper planning, life insurance funding, and possibly a testamentary trust. That tax bill can be funded by an insurance policy instead of forcing the kids to sell the cottage in a panic. Step 4, she only draws the legal minimum from her RRIF, keeping her taxable income low, protecting her OAS, and letting the tax-deferred growth continue. Step 5, she names beneficiaries directly on her TFSA, her RRIF, and her insurance policy, so those assets bypass probate entirely in provinces where that matters, which in Ontario alone can save her estate roughly 1.5% on assets that would otherwise flow through the will. The result? Barbara lives comfortably. She keeps the cottage. The kids inherit it. The CRA gets a fraction of what they would have gotten. And the family wealth, the wealth her husband spent 40 years building at a Stelco plant, actually passes to the next generation instead of being vaporized in a single tax year. That is the Canadian version of buy, borrow, die. And I want to hear from this community. Drop your comments down below. Tell me your province. Tell me your situation. Tell me if you have a cottage, a HELOC, a RRIF, a permanent insurance policy you've been wondering about for years. I read these comments. I want to know who's watching. Now I have to give you the warnings because this strategy is powerful, but it is not a magic wand. And a lot of Canadians are getting this completely wrong when they try to do it without guidance. Warning number 1, interest rates. We are not in 2021 anymore. HELOC rates in 2026 are not free money. If you borrow $500,000 at 7%, that's $35,000 a year in interest. The math only works if your assets are appreciating faster than the after-tax cost of the debt, and if your cash flow can comfortably service it. Warning number 2, deductibility. Interest on money borrowed to earn investment income can be tax deductible in Canada, but interest on money borrowed purely for personal lifestyle spending is not. You need to structure this carefully, and you need to keep meticulous records, because the CRA absolutely will ask. Warning number 3, estate planning. If you die with massive debt against your assets and no insurance to clear it, your executor is going to have a nightmare, and your kids may be forced to sell the very assets you were trying to protect. The death part of buy, borrow, die only works if it's properly funded, usually with permanent life insurance, and properly documented in a clean, updated will. Warning number 4, family conflict. I have seen siblings tear each other apart over a cottage. One wants to keep it, one wants to sell it, one lives out west and never visits. If you're going to hold appreciating assets until death, you need a family meeting, in writing, with a lawyer present, while you are still alive and well. Warning number 5, the corporate angle. For Canadians who own a small business or a holding company, there is an even more powerful version of this strategy involving corporate-owned life insurance, the capital dividend account, and intergenerational share freezes. That is a whole separate conversation, and if you want me to make a dedicated video on the corporate version of buy, borrow, die in Canada, drop a comment below and tell me. I want to hear from this community. Now let me walk you through the implementation, step by step, the way I would if you were sitting across from me at my kitchen table. Step 1, get your asset inventory on one page: house, cottage, RRIF, TFSA, non-registered, insurance, pensions. Write it all down with current values and adjusted cost bases. Step 2, set up your lines of credit while you still qualify. The worst time to apply for a HELOC is when you actually need it, because the bank looks at income, and retirees on CPP and OAS often get declined. Get the HELOC approved in your early 60s, even if you don't plan to use it for 10 years. Step 3, review your life insurance. If you have an old whole life policy from the 80s, do not cancel it without an independent review. Those policies are often gold mines. Step 4, coordinate with a Canadian tax professional, an estate lawyer, and an independent financial planner who is not just trying to sell you mutual funds. You want a team. Step 5, update your will, your powers of attorney, and your beneficiary designations every 3 years, minimum. Step 6, talk to your kids. Not about the numbers necessarily, but about the plan. Intergenerational wealth transfer fails most often not because of taxes, but because of silence. Now I have to say this clearly, and please listen carefully. This video is for educational purposes only. It is not financial advice. It is not tax advice. It is not legal advice. Canadian tax law is complex. The rules change. The CRA's interpretations change. And your personal situation is unique. Before you implement any part of what I just described, you need to sit down with a qualified Canadian tax professional, an estate lawyer in your province, and an independent financial planner who understands retirement income planning. Please do that. Do not act on a YouTube video alone, not mine, not anyone's. So here is what I want you to do right now. If this video opened your eyes even a little, hit that subscribe button, because I make videos like this every week specifically for Canadian retirees, homeowners, and investors who feel like the system was designed to confuse them. It was. And I'm trying to fix that one video at a time. Drop your comments down below. Tell me your province. Tell me your retirement situation. Tell me if you own a cottage, if you have a HELOC, if you've ever heard of buy, borrow, die before today. And please, share this video with your spouse, your siblings, your adult children, anyone in your family who is approaching retirement or already in it. This is the conversation Canadian families need to be having around the kitchen table in 2026, and almost nobody is having it. The wealthy have known this for 100 years. It's our turn now. I'll see you in the next one.